I'm here on the floor of the NYSE with Jim Cramer. Jim, let's go unfiltered. Just tell me what's top of mind.
Well, this PMI number was just very weak, Zev. It was too weak for either the industrials or the financials, because what people are going to be saying is, now I know why the Fed cut. The Fed cut because there's been a dramatic deceleration in the economy. I think there's been a dramatic deceleration in the industrial economy, and the banks, their strength was driven by the consumer, but people don't think like that. They just say, oh, economy getting weak, sell the banks, credit quality issues. So that's kind of what's dragging the market down. That's top of mind.
Right, definitely supported the Fed rate cut. So I want to ask you, in honor of Halloween, you had this column out this morning talking about parlor games. So one of the parlor games was the Fed. They're talking act as appropriate. But everyone wants to know, what's the next move now?
But that's ridiculous. I mean, we cannot foresee the future. Those predictions have been wrong constantly. But more important, we just had a rate cut. So in any other business, anything that you follow, you would never immediately think about what's going to happen 3 months from now. You would try to really put into context what happened. And into context, what happened is, I think that the PMI was weaker, that the industrial numbers that I'm seeing, whether they be from DuPont or Illinois Toolworks, whether they be from Eaton, whether they be from the autos, they're all very weak. So this is the Fed doing the right thing. And if we want to start talking about, well, what are they going to do in December? Well, you better get a good handle on a lot of things that you can't get a handle on. It's just a game. It's a game that people play because they just don't want to deal with the actual four walls of what's driving the economy, because that requires making, listening to a lot of calls, doing a lot of work, and that's not the nature. I mean, a lot of times it's just hard work. Like, if you look at what football teams do better than others, it's the ones where they work hard and they have a plan. We have to accept the fact that in our business, some people are working hard, some people are just gas bags. Mm-hmm. And the gas bags are discussing December. The realists are saying, okay, let's look at this rate cut. What is he seeing? Why do we have to do it? Instead of just saying, okay, look, why is he doing it? The economy's strong. That's just a total misread. It's like, okay, so DuPont said Tyvek basically is bad. That goes into housing. Well, we don't want Tyvek to be bad, all right? Mm-hmm. We want the industrials to hire people. We want the steel companies to hire people. And you're not getting that kind of hiring. You're getting a lot of hiring at Wendy's.
Right. And you mentioned the PMI. We should also mention core PCE price index took a tick down from 1.8 to 1.7.
This is why there's no reason. Why not? Look, the Fed made a mistake. Lower rates. The purists are wrong constantly. The purists felt that we should have had rates to 4. The purists don't give a damn whether people are thrown out of work or not. Right. I mean, I think that it's the Fed's job to try to stabilize the economy. The economy's doing far worse year over year.
Right. So, Jim, the Fed is parlor game number one. Number two was, believe it or not, the Chinese are saying that they're hesitant to say that there's a deal. Is this more noise? I mean, is the market just looking for a reason?
I could always find two Chinese officials who will say that there's no deal, or that there's that Trump's a jerk, and Cold War language. I find that story is what I call an evergreen. I could write that story tomorrow. I could have written that story 5 days ago. I could write that story next month. I mean, you have to just take everything with a grain of salt out of China. I think the mainstream media hates Trump so much that they think that Trump is far less truthful than the PLA and President Xi. Look, I don't think that's wrong to say. I was part of the mainstream media for a long time. Look, they've decided. The mainstream media says, okay, there's one guy who's a liar and one guy who tells the truth. And you got to believe the guy who tells the truth, and he happens to be the head of China. And to me, that makes no sense. I mean, love him or hate him, Trump is transparent in the sense that there's a government here. Right. We have a government. They do not have a government, they have dictatorship. So dictators, as we know from Orwell, can say whatever they want, okay? In our country, you could say, well, Trump can say whatever he wants, but we have an election that's a year away. And if he says whatever he wants and is constantly wrong, then we're going to have President Warren. Right. So, I mean, there is a check and balance in our country. There's no check and balance about whatever they say in China. So I tire of stories when the market looks like it's going to go up that say, be careful. Now, the PMI of 43 is something to worry about because that's a sign of the future. We do need lower rates to be able to stimulate, particularly autos. Like, people just, now you can say, listen, Jim, people don't buy autos the way they used to. The average age now 25, whatever. But when I look at, let's use Ford as a good example. Ford is constantly trying to tell you not to worry. Constantly. Well, I'll tell you, I bought into that for a while. That was really stupid of me. I'm very worried about Ford. Very worried. So business is bad.
Yeah. So, Jim, we spoke a little about the macro. We have to do it, but let's get into what we really like, the micro. Last night, Facebook reports a top and bottom line beat. Zuckerberg comes out. He's pretty adamant that things are going to get tough going forward as far as the politics goes, but he's not ready to remove political ads. My question is, does Twitter's decision to remove political ads impact Facebook in any way?
Well, look, I mean, I think Facebook's trying to decide what to do. I mean, you could argue, let's get mainstream media. You could argue that Twitter pulls the ads because Trump has 10 times the money of any Democrat, and he can just flood the zone of Twitter with money, and Jack Dorsey's pulling because of that. I don't think that's the case, but you can say that. But Facebook right now is debating it. And they pull a lot of ads. They pull a lot of ads they think are untruthful. I think people just feel like they just glaze over that. He said they're spending billions of dollars doing that. He believes in free speech. Now, remember, there's free speech and there's paid free speech. Organic free speech, everybody says is fine. But paid free speech that's lies, there are a lot of people who question it, and I don't blame them. I think that what's going to have to happen is the government's going to decide, not Zuckerberg. I mean, the government's going to have to decide. I mean, Zuckerberg is trying to do the right thing. He's not sure what the right thing is because no one's sure what the right thing is. I mean, it's people's opinion, for heaven's sake. I mean, let's say you think that the NRA lies when it says that that guns don't kill people. People do. Okay, well, that's a lie. I mean, guns kill people. I mean, I can determine that that's a lie. Or I can say, as someone who has guns, well, you know what? That's true. I mean, we can, or you could say, well, listen, Trump is a fascist who was elected by the Russians. Well, I mean, okay. I mean, are you going to vote against Trump because of? I mean, let's have some common sense.
Right.
I mean, you like Trump, you vote for him. You hate him, you don't vote for him. I don't think that an ad on Facebook is all that dispositive of your judgment. But we make a big deal of it because the mainstream media wants to make a big deal of it. Mainstream media would absolutely love, I believe, to pull all political ads because then the Republicans, who have far more money to spend, won't be able to defeat the Democrats in Facebook.
Right. And the one thing I realize, I do think Zuckerberg did a very good job yesterday trying to toe the line of, you want us to monitor, but we can't control people's free speech.
Thank you.
So it is a difficult situation.
Yes, and he did not say we're a Greyhound bus and it doesn't matter, we're a common carrier. He didn't say that. But again, people hate him. He's another guy they hate.
The other thing to keep in mind is political ads are a very small portion of Facebook's revenue, right? This isn't a money thing.
They could get rid of it. As a matter of fact, they're spending billions trying to get the ads to be right. So they could just say, all right, good, we could just throw out all the political ads. We don't have to have anybody who reads them.
Well, less than like 1% of revenue.
Yeah, but this is what people like to talk about because they hate Zuckerberg. I mean, is he a hateable guy? I don't know, not as much as he used to be.
Not as much as he used to be. No. All right, Jim, let's switch it up real quick. Talk about Apple. We saw 54% revenue growth in the quarter. That's an acceleration, I believe, sequentially.
Services was really terrific. And
services was great also.
Yeah, it's very funny. I was talking to Tim. I said, so the margins must be great on that. They don't talk margins on services, but the margins are extraordinary. Yeah. AirPod margins.
Oh, and the various different ones, right.
AirPod, I think it's important to point out, and there were questions raised about something I said about availability of the 11, that it was not available. Right. And it turns out that Tim said at the beginning there was availability issues. Now, I said that on air, and the people who hate Apple made me correct myself. They said, listen, Jim, there's no basis in that. And I thought it was really interesting that there was Tim saying, no, I was right. But again, there's just a lot of people who hate Tim. I got to tell you, Zev, I don't share the antipathy toward these people who have made lots of money and done a great job. Tim Cook has navigated everything correctly. And, I remember when people said, oh, he's not giving us the breakdown anymore on the cell phone because the cell phones are going to turn off. And he was saying, no, it's not as good a representative. Well, that was totally true because if you're going to have an inflection point where service revenue is going to be more important than cell phone.
Well, we got a 9% decline in iPhone sales and a 2% bump in revenue. So maybe there is more to the story than iPhone.
Yeah, look.
52% of revenue used to be 60.
If it were the way that people thought it was going to be, then Apple would be 50 points lower. They just look at one of the things. Apple Care Like I pay for Apple Care. I don't know.
Record quarter?
I checked some box, right?
Right.
And it's very funny. I get up very early, and right there, like around 3:20 a.m., I see that I paid my Apple Care bill. And now I went. I did not pay my $232 bill for last month for all the things I get from Apple in time because I didn't have it sweep yet to my Chase account. Probably destroyed my FICO. But there's another thing that they do. I mean, they just Apple has so many revenue streams that are in their infancy. I think that people just feel like Tim's not creative. I don't know. I want noise canceling AirPods. I just spent $200 on noise canceling Bose headphones that are really bulky. I can have noise canceling AirPods
With Siri.
Yeah.
$250.
Isn't that fantastic? By the way, there's one I said, Tim, are you going to be ready for Christmas with those? No.
Yeah.
No.
Not going to
No,
be ready.
you can't. And he said, is he working 24/7? We probably can't do it. Same thing with the watch. Now, when you hear something like that, what it says is, they have demand for product. Everyone else is, almost every company I know, is making too much product, and there's not enough demand. Only is
can't
Apple.
keep up.
They
can't keep up.
They can't keep up. They can't keep up because they've got superior products that people really want. And you know what? I keep hearing, well, Tim, he's invented nothing. And the people who say that are people who have this white thing out of their ear. I mean, there was a guy today in the office.
Maybe the calls that there's no innovation at the company.
And I said, what are you doing? He's got the white things in his ears. He was listening to me on Sirius XM with John Hand. I mean, people just have white things from their ear all the time. I mean, where did that come from? Well, that was Tim Cook. So, what is he supposed to do? I know what people want.
Healthcare.
Right?
I would argue there's innovation.
Right before Steve Jobs died, he was trying to come up with a car that was powered by water. Well, he couldn't. I guess people feel that Tim Cook should. The fact is that if you took my cell phone from me, I don't think you could. There is nothing in the world that when you use my cell phone cracked 3 weeks ago. So I stood in line at the Apple store at Midtown for an hour and a half. And then
no choice.
For an hour and a half.
It's a lifeline.
What was I going to do? Not have a phone? Are you kidding me?
Right.
Remember your keys used to be important? They don't mean anything. Money, nothing.
It's the most valuable piece of real estate on the planet.
Exactly right.
I mean, that's what it comes down to.
Right. I mean, there it is, right there. And you have to have it. You can't, I got a text this morning from Benioff at 3 a.m. I mean, I should have turned the thing off. I didn't turn it off. And I realized, I sleep with it.
Of course.
I sleep with it.
It's right by my bed.
I sleep
I'm playing
with it
Call
more
of
than I
Duty
sleep with
Mobile
my
before I
wife.
go to sleep. Yeah.
I do.
So, all right, I do want to dive into more Apples on the Action Alerts Plus call real quick.
Yes.
But for more on Apple, be sure to get over to Real Money. It is our stock for the
don't
day.
Don't forget also Bull Market Fantasy.
Yes, so real quick, so before we jump over to ActionAlertsPlus.com, I just want to remind everyone, 10:45, Jim is sitting down with Bill Enright over at BullMarketFantasy.com to talk fantasy.
Skyping.
She's Skyping in. I'm here today, so she's not, but she is Skyping in. Jim, what are we going to be talking about?
I want to talk about, obviously we have Thursday night game. I'm going to talk about how to use the waiver wire and discuss this whole, what I would regard as being the psychological issues of game time decision.
Okay.
I mean, because I got a really big game time decision on Sunday. Jalen from the Steelers. And Bill understands a lot of what I try to do is relate stock to that. I mean, I feel very pressured to make certain moves. How do you remove the pressure? How do you become less emotional? I can tell you how to become less emotional about a stock like Twilio.
We talk about it all the time, right? Staying
Right.
objective.
But I can't get less emotional about waiver wire and about looking at my team. Bill's going to help me the way I would help you with stocks.
All right, again, that's bullmarketfantasy.com at 10:45. Katherine Skyping in, Jim, Bill, they're going to tell you everything you need to know for the weekend ahead. I'm Zev Fima. We'll see you tomorrow.